Welcome to the Omnibus Show, a program for people who are interested in everything, with deep conversations on a wide variety of subjects. And now your host, Dave Gibbs.
Well, hello, and welcome to this episode of the Omnibus Show, the program for people who are interested in everything, with deep conversations on a wide variety of subjects. Today's guest is Sue Finkam. She's been a businesswoman with many companies, and most recently, she's the founder and CEO of FireStarter, a full-service marketing agency. And in the healthcare industry, she has had leading positions at Indiana University Health, St. Vincent Health, and OrthoIndy. In the nonprofit sector, she has been a director in the Indiana Donor Network, and her list of experience goes on. As City Councilwoman, she has represented the Northeast District going on 12 years now, and currently, she is the candidate for the position of Carmel Mayor. Welcome, Sue.
Thank you.
It's great to have you here. Well, thank you for being with us. Well, going right into it, could you please tell us about your background? We'll start with your business journey.
Sure. It's a journey that no guidance counselor would ever draw out because it's very convoluted. But, I started in sports medicine and took care of athletes that were injured, but quickly pivoted into the industrial setting, treating injured workers. And that got me into ergonomics consulting. And of course, if I wanted to be a consultant, I had to devise the programs, sell them, deliver them. So that got me into marketing and PR and communications. So really since 2004, I've been full-time marketing, except for a 2-year stint where I went into an HR field because I really wanted that experience to build on my executive portfolio. So
people management.
It is people management. Everything we do is about people, right? And I want to make sure I had that employee relations piece so I could be a more effective executive down the road. So for the most part, since 2004, I've been in marketing and helping tell stories and helping make sure I can communicate on behalf of corporations, which lends itself well to marketing a city, for sure.
Oh, exactly. And is there a particular position, I'll say aside from your current company in marketing, that you would say was particularly helpful towards being a city councilwoman and a future mayor?
That's a great question. I'm not sure that there's any one that I could pick out. I think all of them I can take learnings and pieces from and apply them and build upon, to be a city councilor or a future potential mayor. I think one volunteer role I had was probably more impactful, and I was a national committee chair for the National Athletic Trainers Association. It had 40,000 members, and my committee represented 40,000 of those, or 40% of those. And so I learned how to advocate. I learned how to be a go-between between the athletic trainers in the field and the National Association. I helped athletic trainers change their state practice act, so governmental affairs relationships. So I think that was probably the most interesting piece in my career, and I think what really got me intrigued with advocacy and representing people.
Oh, that's very good, because that's a big part of being a mayor, isn't it?
It is.
And working on the city council. So how did all of this lead you toward politics in a political direction?
When I was traveling as a consultant, I wasn't here in Indiana very much. I grew up in Michigan, moved to Indiana later after college. But when I finally got roots back in Indiana after being in airplanes and cars a lot, I really didn't like the fact the state of Indiana wasn't paying our schools, right, for the dollars they needed to run. And that got me paying attention to politics and what parties were in power and who were the people at the head of those parties, and really just started to learn. I was fortunate enough to be chosen to be part of the Lugar series, which is a Republican training program for women, which teaches you about how to do anything in a campaign: volunteer, finance, campaign manager, candidate, and the like. And I think that experience really opened my eyes, and I thought, I'm going to use my marketing and PR background to help a candidate or two someday down the road. And I did. But then we'd moved here in 2007, and I was a marketing director for a local hospital at the time, and really involved in the community and with Mayor Brainerd's administration, and really got to be excited about the vision he was selling and putting into place. and I saw an opportunity to run in my district. I was dissatisfied with the person that was there and kept thinking, I am going to help whoever runs against him, and that didn't happen, so I thought, I'm going to do it. I'm going to try and see where that takes me. So that's kind of the path. It wasn't any kind of lightning aha moment where I said,
Sure.
I'm meant to be in this role, but I felt like here's an opportunity for me to use my skills to hopefully better the representation people in my district, Carmel, deserve.
And now it's 12 years later.
And now it's 12 years later, which went by in a flash. I can't believe it. And here we were again, right, with Mayor Brainerd announcing that he was not going to run again, and thinking, how can I better the city of Carmel with the business experience that I have, with the passion for serving that I have? Am I the right fit at the right time, in our history and our journey? And took some time after Mayor Brainerd announced he wasn't running to talk to people, and really felt like what I bring is what people are looking for moving forward. So he jumped in with both feet.
Well, there you go. That's how you do it, isn't it? Well, in the 12-year span that you've been in office, I want to ask a different kind of question.
Okay.
What is a something that would be like, what's something that you've learned along the way that helped you be a more efficient helper? Does that make sense? How you can connect your office and what you're doing in city council with your community.
So I was the first one that did town halls and a newsletter, and so I think I helped. What I learned when I first got on council is I wasn't hearing from people. And I know people are busy with their lives, and if you don't hear from them, they're probably pretty happy. But I just knew certain things we were debating people were interested in, because I'd hear it at, going to a show, like here at Feinstein
Sure.
Club, or out with friends. So I'm like, they have to be wondering these same things throughout my whole district. So I really tried to aggressively outreach, and I think it was well received. So I think I learned that you have to really work hard at trying to get your message across. I met with someone from Home Place last week, and we have a lot of communication vehicles in place now. The city's got a more advanced website than it ever did. We do a weekly newsletter that's electronic. We do one that's printed. And he still felt like he wasn't being communicated with. And I feel like you just have to be very intentional about communication and invite people in. So I think from those experiences is why I've also said, I want to make sure that I do a citywide survey if I get elected, to really make sure we're seeking feedback.
Yes.
And seeking to understand what our constituents really want or dream for. So I think that was a big takeaway.
Oh, great. Well, it is good learning that and having the connection with local people.
Yes.
So moving on to the mayor of Carmel, what drew you toward wanting to be for the office for the mayor?
So sitting there for 12 years, right, and being able to work closely with Mayor Brainerd and our other councilors who over the 12 years have come and gone, I got to see firsthand the problems that we have to solve, the challenges that we have to work around, funding often being one of them, how you respond to things that you can't control, outside of your span of control within the city, and all that really excited me. And I really want to take what I've learned in the business world and apply it to government. I know there's some people that say you can't run government like a business, and I agree it's not apples to apples.
Right.
But gosh, there are learnings we can apply.
Sure.
Starting with developing an incredible culture, having employees like a nonprofit align with the mission, vision, values of what we are trying to do to serve our community, and doubling down and investing in people. Because we can't do anything if our employees at the City of Carmel don't feel valued and don't feel supported. So that's something that we can bring from the nonprofit world and the business world as well, the for-profit world. Making sure that we have every dollar assigned. Every dollar has a name to what it's going to fix and what it's going to help and how it's going to serve. So wiping out our budget and starting with a zero-based budget, and all the fiscal lessons that go along with maintaining close fiscal control. So some of those things that I saw that we were challenged with, I felt like, hey, I really can bring this business angle to this and make a difference. I'm a performance improvement person. I want to just constantly dial in and tune in and make things better. I think that comes from my sports medicine background a little bit. For hours I would stand on the sideline a football practice, for instance, at Division I football, and watch coaches work with offensive linemen and literally just change their stance from instead of on fingertips to knuckles to the heel of their hand and trying to get another half second of speed or another advantage over their opponent. And, I've kind of modeled some of what, I don't know if that thinking is what drew me to sports medicine or that sports medicine lesson is what drew me to the business. Mm-hmm. But having the perspective of there's always ways we can get improvements and, small little changes if you're paying attention make a big difference sometimes. Mm-hmm. And so that kind of stuff, I'm a little bit of a business wonk. Sure. And it excites me. And I feel also it's a good approach to Falomir Brainerd, yes. Right? He's incredible visionary, and he's set this community on the map worldwide with our transportation network of roundabouts mm-hmm. and our urban built environment and the incredible quality of life we have here. And I feel like I can keep all of that going, having been there for 12 years, but also start dialing in some business things and make sure we reduce waste, improve efficiency, improve employee satisfaction, improve community communication.
Mm-hmm. And I know one of the big issues, Jeff Worrell was mm-hmm. on here previously, and I asked him to explain the debt issue, which I think with the nature of our demographics, there's a great concern of what all that means in the usage of money, debt, and so forth. And I think he explained that quite well. And that will obviously be a challenge for your, if you become the mayor, that will be a challenge for, the next years ahead.
Absolutely.
Yeah.
And we've come out of an incredible decade or so where we have been able to borrow at very, very low cost. Mm-hmm. It's allowed us to do a lot more. We can use the tax dollars much more efficiently and effectively. Oh, the old saying about what got us here today won't get us there tomorrow really applies mm-hmm. In how we leverage taxpayer dollars to get stuff done. We have to be much more cautious, much more flexible. We are in a more volatile environment right now. There's a lot of talk at the State House about potentially completely going away with income tax. Well, as a taxpayer, that makes me happy, as it would, I'm sure, all of our constituents who pay income tax. As someone who's managing a city budget, that's a significant portion of our budget.
Sure.
So how do we maintain that revenue so we can continue delivering services like plowing roads and filling potholes and having a safe environment, which is exactly what our residents want us to do? How can we do that in a way that is still high level without raising taxes? So I think we may not be able to do the same kind of borrowing we've done in the past. That's fine, but we have to make sure we have fiscal flexibility.
Yes.
And can explain to the taxpayers how we're using their dollars, which I'm also passionate about, making sure we're extremely transparent, putting our budget and our plans and our success or failure against those plans online so our residents can see it whenever they want.
Yes.
You can log in and see your checkbook, and you can see how your dollars are spent. I think that same consideration should be given to our taxpayers mm-hmm. With how we communicate.
I think that's a good idea. And that observing that, it would be good toward helping people be more locally oriented because they would be aware of that. And that always seems a challenge. Back on the tax issue, would the legislation, because this is something that's beyond my purview, would that be a flat tax that they're suggesting?
They have a tax
tax
force
on products and so forth,
right.
Flat fees.
They have the state legislature has started a tax task force. Say that 5 times fast.
Say that 5 times fast.
And they're going to look at all of these different taxes, is my understanding. Okay. Sales tax, income tax, business personal property tax, and then property tax.
Yes.
Those are 4 major income sources for local government. And so I think they're looking at all of that to determine what can make us more economically feasible, if you will. What can be economically feasible locally? Mm-hmm. What would make us be attractive for people to move here to get jobs, to make sure we have the right workforce for all of our economic initiatives. So they're looking at all that. I don't know how long it'll take them to study that, but that's just getting underway.
Okay.
They're going to hear from locals, though, that if they do away with one tax, they have to help us find a replacement income.
Sure. You mean with local government?
Mm-hmm, yes, yeah. Local government.
Because they'll have to transition on that.
Correct.
To sort of create a new structure.
Correct.
That makes sense. Well, that'd be good. Well, thank you, Sue.
Yes.
Well, we're going to take a break right now, and we'll be back soon with Chapter 2 in our interview with Sue Finkam. Well, hello and welcome back. We're in Chapter 2 now in our interview with Sue Finkam, who is running for the office of Mayor of Carmel, Indiana. Well, Sue, you were talking at the end of the last chapter about certain perspectives you learn as a city councilwoman. Jim Brainerd, who's been a big visionary for the city, has, you know, like I've said before, it's like following Bobby Knight, you know. It's different. Bobby Knight was a very different personality, but you know what I'm saying? Someone who's so big, he's got big shoes. He's got big, tall shoes. Could you tell us about your continuity plan?
Sure. I think that the good news is we've got an incredible community, so we don't have this massive change program that we have to put in place. Mm-hmm. Things are running really well, but there's opportunities for improvement all along. So one of the first things I want to do, as I mentioned earlier, was do a large community-wide survey and gain insights into our community. That's my marketing background, right, to make sure we're saturating ourselves with the voice of the customer, so to speak. Once we have that, develop the city's first community-endorsed strategic plan and make that available, what our action plans are on that and our scorecard against that, make that available for residents to see. I'm also really...
Forgive me.
Yes.
When you say the strategy plan, what you want to do is kind of do bullet points of the vision and then send that out to the citizenry to get their input, and so you can keep a local conversation going.
Correct. And I think that also helps educate people what we're doing and also makes them feel that they're more a part of the future of Carmel. Mm-hmm. I think with the massive growth we've had in the last 8 years in particular, many people feel like they're on the sidelines of their own community, and I want to invite them in. And it's also something, if we get people talking about that and more united in their community, they're united as a community as a whole, too, right? So that's job one, working with the community to invite them into different committees, like something on transportation, Arts Commission, fiscal investments. Like, we have incredible talent. We have world changers and world leaders right here in Carmel. Mm-hmm. Why wouldn't we invite them in to participate more at a higher level?
Sure.
So I want to do some of that as well. One of the things I hear door to door all the time is crime prevention. So making sure that we have our police force fully equipped and trained and staffed, and they feel supported to do their job to make sure our residents feel safe. If we even blink on crime prevention, all these amazing amenities we put in place, the parks and the trails and our amazing streetscapes, people won't feel the same walking on them if they don't feel safe. So that's a very, very important initiative for me as well. And I'm really happy to say I got the FOP, the Fraternal Order of Police endorsement, both in the spring and in the fall.
Oh, really?
So I feel like they're great partners in this venture too.
Yes.
I'm also really passionate about economic development. One of the reasons we have low taxes here is we have a lot of corporate partners, a lot of companies that are here in the community. Mayor Brainerd has done a lot of our economic development. With him leaving, we need to make sure we have someone who's a data-driven economic development professional here to hunt for business and make sure that as business are growing, expanding here, we retain them, and also we're looking for new ones to come to the market. So that's an initiative I feel passionate about as well. And, make sure we're really trying to support our international community. I think people don't understand how international we really are. The school has an interesting statistic that 102 languages are spoken in the homes of kids that go to Carmel schools from 78 countries. That's incredible. And so I propose we also build an international center that could both serve as an economic development initiative, but also something that unites us as a community around art and food and faith and culture, right? So maybe we're highlighting Ethiopian food and culture. In the next week or two, we're looking at Ireland or Nigeria or England, whatever it might be, right? But we're really trying to, through food and art and fun, we're also learning about each other. So.
Well, food's going to be there. I'll be there.
Me too.
Well, will you expand the Sister City program if you're mayor?
Yeah, I think we should.
Following up on your international.
Yeah.
Because we've got the beautiful Japanese park.
Yes. And I think that that's a huge opportunity to have them involved in that international community, as well as our international arts festival. You know, the folks that run that and participate in that all the time. I think if we just put a bigger strategy and invite more people in, I think we get some really fun things come out of that. And I look forward to having those conversations. I'm actually meeting here, I think, next month with the Sister City organizations.
Oh, nice.
To get, to learn and to listen and to introduce myself and allow them to ask questions too.
Well, that's good. I think having, I'd been on Sister City committee down in Indianapolis at one point, and one thing that I learned that after coming out of World War II, President Eisenhower was really the starting point of that organization, and he saw that as really very helpful. It's like pre-politics, where you have cultural exchange, and it's always harder to get in a fight with somebody when you know them.
Agree.
And I think that was a very strong idea that he helped start, and that with all the craziness that's out there, having those connections is a positive civic opportunity.
Agree. I always say good government starts with good dialogue, and so you have to, as going back to our conversation earlier, be very intentional about seeking that dialogue.
Yes.
And I think if we have better discourse, we are able to make better decisions, which will hopefully then lead to a more vibrant community, one that is more aligned with what the government is doing, and also we're more aligned with what the citizens want as a result. So.
Sure. And now looking at the other side of the ledger is, what would you say are some of the greatest challenges that are before you if you become the mayor?
So I think one of the first challenges that I'm concerned about is that the revenue piece, because there are a lot of unknowns out there. So I think the way you combat that is to make sure you have built-in fiscal flexibility. I mentioned that earlier. So that if something comes out of left field that you didn't control and you didn't see coming, we do have those occasional unfunded mandates from the federal government. When the tax caps went in place, with Governor Daniels in place, that was certainly something that was unexpected. Yeah. So I think we have to expect the unexpected and plan for something to be surprising. And so I would say not concerned, but maybe aware of the need for that. I want to make sure that one of the first things we do is start to point our ship more in the direction of flexibility. I think we also have housing concerns here. Only 20 houses went on the market a couple of weeks ago, so we've got people who aren't moving. Without mobility, it's hard to truly meet your workforce needs. We know we have an affordability problem in some cases, which really experts will say call that attainability, because it's hard to determine and define what affordability really means in different communities. So I think we have to be looking at that. We also have concerns from our constituents about the type of development we've had the last few years. Many people are concerned about the number of apartments we've brought online. This is a very hyper-local issue, but I think one we need to be very careful of. I've committed to doing a housing study to really look at what our inventory of homes is and types of houses are, whether we say housing, but housing situations, rental, for sale, single-family homes, for sale, multifamily, all of that. See what our inventory is and determine what our needs are, not just here in Carmel, but in Hamilton County and Central Indiana, because it all impacts us.
Sure.
But I feel like we do need more for-sale product here, and we do get asked a lot for condos, where families who've been in a 4-bedroom, 2.5 bath, half-acre lot household want to downsize, and there's nowhere to go with those high amenities in a walkable area. So I feel like we've got opportunities there too. So, and I mentioned crime prevention as well. Those are kind of my top things I want to make sure we keep an eye on and take action toward.
Now, I think that being a citizen here is that, as you mentioned earlier, people who feel like things are getting out of the control type of thing, the growth of those type of locations, that's probably one thing that I've observed that people would be concerned about the height, because it's mostly, homes and so forth and condominiums where there's a large number. What do you call that?
Multifamily?
Multifamily, correct.
Or multi-use.
Yeah, multi-use, because they're really multi-use, like on 116th Street in Rangeline, where you're getting quite a few of those popping up, growing up. So that seemed to be one of the things. And I would think that the integration of that into the more traditional home community would be, that would be a concern for people of, big growth.
Right.
Type of a thing. Now, here's my question out of left field is transportation, because Carmel is now its own place. It was a suburb forever, and now it's kind of its own place. It's grown apart from Indianapolis, and it's become its own destination city, and so. Has there been discussion about things like taxis and buses and, future, I don't know if rail is quite an infrastructure cost.
It is.
It really is, because Indianapolis in the last decade had that issue, and then they settled on the Red Line with buses.
Yep.
Is that, going on with the greatest challenges ahead, is that something that's been factored in by the council?
Well, we have been talking about it since I got on council 12 years ago, right? And I think there was a little bit of a wait-and-see attitude with what the Red Line did and how it progressed and how successful it was. There's been discussions about an intra-county circulator and an inter-county circulator. I know there are employers now going down to meet the bus at the end of the line to pick up people and bring them into Hamilton County. There's a lot of carpool opportunities. So Uber and Lyft were solving a problem we had before COVID hit. Now there aren't as many available in Hamilton County as before.
I see.
So I feel like we need to be open and at the table for transportation options, because we do need to get people here to work who can't live here and can't afford it. But right around the corner, experts say, are driverless cars. Right, which could solve a problem for transportation in some opportunities. So I'm not a big fan of a super huge investment, especially with technology changing at the speed of light right now.
Yes.
Because what the investment at the Red Line is with those buses may be something completely different in 4 to 5 years. So I think that's something we have to stay ahead of technology, stay in the conversation, but still keep talking. I do feel like we could do something really unique with the cities in Hamilton County, especially Westfield, Noblesville, Fishers, and Carmel, to have a circulator going between our communities.
Yes.
We have few people who need to get to physician
offices. Forgive me, when you say circulator, do you mean like a light rail, or would that be some kind of like bus transport?
I think more bus, van, those type of trolley, those type of opportunities. Again, I'd rather walk before we run with a type of solution here to make sure we don't inappropriately use taxpayer dollars on something that doesn't work.
Sure.
Right? I said for years we should start gaining trust in public transport by, when we have our big events, having buses run from the east side and the west side and the south side into a central core to get people used to using buses. And there is a little bit of a fear factor, because if it's something I haven't done before, or if it's something I'm unfamiliar with, I don't want to do something first. I still think there's room for testing and trial there while we look at technology and while we look at circulators. I think on-demand transportation is going to be the next wave of what we do, just because it's more reliable, it's easier to do, where I call up and get a bus to come to my curb to take me to the curb of a doctor's office or something. So I see us continue to talk about that.
And I would think with the increasing aging population that we have here in America, and here in Hamilton County, that would be a growing concern with, am I correct?
Yes.
Yeah.
And Prime Life Enrichment, which is a great nonprofit here, offers some door-to-door transportation. Unfortunately, the demand is greater than they can provide. There's other organizations within the county that's done the same. So I know there's conversations that continue about how to fund those, how to increase the access and availability and reliability of those, and I'm a fan of that.
Okay. Well, that sounds very interesting, and I'm sure the discussions are really heating up on that. So, say you become mayor.
Okay.
How do you foresee, not knowing how many times you would be in office, but how do you see Carmel in 10 years from now?
That's a great question. A lot of that depends, first of all, on our external environment, recessions and the like. But I see that Carmel continuing to thrive, continuing to be leaders. As I mentioned, there's world changers and world leaders here, and we need to apply that same thinking to our city government.
Yes.
I see us as one that has taken really good fiscal management for the tax dollars. I see one that people feel like they're engaged in the community. We've continued from a development standpoint to fill out some of our areas that will develop naturally. US 31 corridor is one example where we've got a lot of empty parking lots. We will have increased development, like I'm sure at some point Merchant Square will turn over again. The east side of Range Line will probably grow in, but in more intentional ways to make sure that we're developing, attracting business and making sure those condos and single-family homes available. So I see a slower pace of growth. I see us still being highly attractive and desirable. I still see us being a highly educated, art-supporting community. And hopefully I see us as one that's maybe bucking the trend instead of being more polarized, being more united. Okay. And maybe I'm a little Pollyanna there, but I think if we're intentional about making opportunities for people to understand each other and support each other, we can make some inroads there.
Okay. Thank you very much. The question that was going in my mind while you were talking about the different locations, like the mall near Keystone, and we talked about multi-use locations. Do you see the malls, the strip malls and the malls changing in their structure and how they're used? Because I know I've been in some cities. I'm thinking of my experience in Vancouver, BC, and in Liverpool, England, where you had just an enormous amount of multi-use structures. They're built on each other.
Right.
And is that discussed? I'm thinking, in the future, that would be something that the community would be interested in.
Well, if you look even in our backyard here with Clay Terrace, the owners of that have determined that while they did a great thing, it was one of the first open-air kind of malls, that they had kind of made a mistake and not put housing there. Because in the evening, the traffic dies off, it's not as vibrant, and if they had people living there, going down to get a cup of coffee at 8 o'clock at night, or meeting a friend for a cocktail, or they could also shop and support the retail. So you see a big section of it now is torn out where they're putting in apartments, a parking garage, a hotel, a big office plaza building for that mixed use, right? So that we can use the same land but for different uses. So it may be busy during the day for office, busy at night for residential and retail uses. So it's already happened across the country. There's discussions at Greenwood Park Mall about what that should look like in the future. Circle City Mall, right, is turning over, right? And there's some conversation about should that become more residential? So it's definitely happening. And I know I have a developer on the East Coast who is in just that space where they take the anchor tenants of malls and make them condos, but leave the retail in the middle of the mall. So interesting conversations, again. Yeah,
it is because, with increased population, I mean, how many decades ago was Carmel like 20,000 people? And now
long time.
over 100,000 people. That's something that, space is always, that's always going to be a consideration as you increase in population.
Yeah, and it depends on what study you see. We're anywhere from roughly 4 million to 10 million housing units short. And we don't have to house them all here, because that's what I hear people say, well, we don't want them all here.
Oh, right.
Of course not. But it is a national concern about as far as the number and type of housing. It's interesting, too, when you look at the millennials, not even that, the Gen Zs, the 20-somethings, and you look at the 65-plus somethings.
Sure.
There's a lot of...
The baby boomers.
Yes, there's been a lot of commonality there. They like to use their discretionary dollars on travel and food and experiences. They don't really want a house that they have to be beholden to, mowing the lawn and, cleaning it. They want to spend their free time doing things that matter to them, whether it be social endeavors or whether it be philanthropic endeavors. And so there's a lot of interesting corollaries between those two age groups. And what's feeding into that is they don't want for sale housing. They want rental properties, right? Either they can't afford it, aren't ready yet in that stage of life, or past that homeownership. So I think that's interesting. That's part of what is driving all these rental units too across the country and in Carmel. We did a study of the apartments on Monon Boulevard, and over a third are 55 plus.
Are they really?
So everyone says, oh, there's all these youngsters down there. Not necessarily. There are people who have sold their homes at the height of the market. There's people who are renters by choice. There's people who are snowbirds, right, who want to be half the year and half in Florida or somewhere. So it's increasingly renting is increasingly becoming a lifestyle choice. So we have to accommodate that. We want to make sure we have housing for everybody, all types of people in Carmel, all age groups, right, family, no family. So it's a challenge for sure, because that needle does change.
Yeah, and thank you. To me, that's the big challenge, is increasing population, economic challenges, and housing challenges for all kinds of people.
Absolutely.
Of different age and economic strata. Well, thank you, Sue.
Thank you.
Best wishes on your candidacy.
Thank you so much.
And thank you for being with us today.
My pleasure.
It was great to have you here. Well, thank you for being with us. And we'd like to thank our sponsor, Hotel Carmichael. Today, we're shooting at Feinstein's. We look forward to being with you in our next episode of The Omnibus Show.
If you enjoyed this program, please like, share, and subscribe to continue the conversation. For the Omnibus Show newsletter, please sign up at theomnibusshow.com.